So this is something very unique that's happened within the adaptive division that probably couldn't happen in any other division within CrossFit. Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to talk about Morgan Johnson. Now, if you don't know that name, she actually won the CrossFit Games in the women's neuromuscular division. Although it wasn't quite that straightforward. In fact, there was a lot of noise around whether or not she should be allowed to compete in that division. And generally, within all the adaptive divisions, there was a lot of confusion, some issues with the rulebook. In fact, I made quite a few videos about that in the lead up to the CrossFit Games. And even after she won, you may have seen her interviewed by Andrew Hiller or the article that was put up by Barbell Spin talking about these eligibility issues, what was going on behind the scenes with people challenging whether or not she should have been allowed to compete. But at the end of the day, CrossFit gave her the okay, she went to the games, she competed in that neuromuscular division, and she won her division of the CrossFit Games. End of story. Or is it? Because yesterday, Wodapalooza sent out their invites for the neuromuscular division. And a very interesting thing happened. Because Morgan, who was sitting, I believe, 5th on the leaderboard when I'd seen it in the morning, well, suddenly she dropped right to the bottom. In fact, all of her scores had been removed. So I reached out and asked her what had happened, and she told me that she had been deemed ineligible to compete at Wodapalooza. Now, of course, we should keep in mind that these events are run by different people. CrossFit managed everything in-house, whereas Wodapalooza is using WheelWod. But theoretically, well, the divisions should be the same. They should have the same standards. Now, this is really interesting because this is something that would not happen in any other division within the CrossFit Games. For example, if somebody was competing in the 50 to 55 division at the CrossFit Games, well, they would imagine that any other event, whether it be a CrossFit licensed event or a CrossFit-like event, if they had a 50 to 55 division, well, that would be their division. It would be very strange if when they turned up, they were told, well, actually, we've done a bit of research and, you were born on the 29th of February and that's a leap year, so we're actually only counting every 4th year for your age, which means you're going to have to compete in a much younger age group. So a very Pirate of Penzance situation, which is a Gilbert and Sullivan comedic opera. If you've never heard of it, go and look it up. But ultimately, what does this mean? Well, it means on the surface that Morgan will not be competing at Wodapalooza in the neuromuscular division. But actually, it really opens up a much bigger conversation. Because I've already mentioned all the controversy in the lead up to the games this year. And really, this is just adding fuel to that fire, isn't it? Because now it is not people's individual opinions whether or not she should compete. Well, you now have a competition that has ruled that she shouldn't compete. Now, admittedly, this wasn't a ruling by CrossFit and the CrossFit Games. This is Wodapalooza and WheelWod. But it raises a really interesting question for next year. Because what will happen if Morgan tries to defend her title at the CrossFit Games? Really, we're going to see one of two situations, aren't we? On the one hand, if they allow her to compete, well, now we start to have discrepancies between different adaptive competitions. And that is not a great look for the adaptive division. And it definitely doesn't help try to encourage more people to get involved in adaptive competitions if there is uncertainty as to who can qualify for different competitions. Or on the other hand, if they decide that no, she is no longer eligible to compete in that division, well, what does that mean for this year that's just gone? And obviously, it's very easy to sit back here and speculate on this information and what does that mean for the big picture. But of course, we have to remember that this information is dealing with people's lives and their emotions. And this is not the same as an athlete choosing to take a PED and then being disqualified. We're dealing with things that are outside of their control. And of course, we can focus in on Morgan and what this means for her or potentially could mean for her in the future. But we can also think about how other athletes are affected by these decisions. For example, we could talk about someone like Krista Davidson. Now, you might not know who she is, but she is an adaptive athlete in the neuromuscular division who will be going to compete at Wodapalooza. But you will not have seen her competing at the CrossFit Games. And that is because she was sitting in 6th place, and they only took the top 5. But the point is that now she is going to a competition where she has been deemed eligible to compete, and Morgan hasn't. So how should she feel about this Games that has just gone? Should she feel that she was robbed of her ticket to the Games? Well, maybe not just on the basis of what's happening at Wodapalooza, but once again, what happens next year at the Games? Because that could change her feelings, couldn't? And of course, this is just me speculating on how she may feel. This isn't something she's directly said to me. And at the end of the day, these are decisions that have been made by Wodapalooza, and technically this does not affect anything that happened at the CrossFit Games. But when we consider what happened in the lead up to the Games this year, and I'm not just speaking about Morgan's situation, because actually there were a number of decisions that people were not happy with that happened within different divisions of the adaptive competition, I just can't see things like this helping the matter. Now, I know a number of adaptive athletes follow the channel, so I'd really love to hear your feedback on this kind of situation and what do you think this means for the adaptive division within CrossFit. And even if you're not an adaptive athlete, I'd still love to hear your take on it, because this is a truly unique situation that we don't really see happen in other divisions. Well, thank you so much for watching. Please like the video, share it around, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will see you in a future video.